Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a criminal, nor a drunkard, nor a sinner, at least not in any way that matters. You're simply poor. Poor enough that the streets no longer want you, and the church no longer pities you. The cold has settled into your bone. The hunger has hollowed out your spine. And now, with nowhere left to go, you've done what thousands did before you. You've turned yourself into the workhouse. Not for punishment, not for rescue, just for a place to lie down without being kicked. Just for something that pretends to be food. Before we step across the threshold, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's so fun to see who's tuning in from around the world. And if you'd like early access to more of these grim history stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You've stopped trying to keep your feet dry. The water got in days ago, first around the toes, then up through the split in the sole, and now it simply lives there, warm for a moment, with your body heat, before turning cold again as the wind snakes around the alley corners. Your socks, if you could still call them that, gave up their duty somewhere between yesterday's crawl beneath the bridge and this morning's rain. The city doesn't notice you, not in any real way. It brushes past you in its rush to open shutters, hawk newspapers, carry umbrellas. The respectable people, the ones who still button their coats all the way up, won't meet your eyes. Their glances skim over you like oil on water. You shuffle past a bakery with its windows already fogged. The smell is too rich to bear. It's not that you thought you'd be allowed in, but the hunger twists harder when the bread is real and just a pane of glass away. You linger half a second too long and draw a look from the man arranging loaves inside. Not a word, just that little purse of the lips, that soft narrowing of the brow that says move along. So you do, past the butcher's, past the fishmonger who throws old bones into the gutter, past the corner where the constable stands. Boots polished and face unreadable. You know better than to let your steps falter near him. Your hands are cracked and flaking. The skin along the knuckles has split in neat little seams, raw pink beneath the grime. You've tried wrapping them in cloth, but everything you own is wet and the cold keeps prizing your fingers open, like a thief at a purse. One palm still smells faintly of lamp oil from when you begged near the docks. You don't remember much about yesterday, or the day before. The memories blend together into a long grey blur, fog and footsteps, wind and want. Your stomach clenches again, not in the sharp pain of sudden hunger, but in that low, grinding ache that feels deeper than the gut. You haven't eaten since... No, it's gone. Doesn't matter now. A boy runs past chasing nothing. You watch him go without envy. Just motionless observation, like watching smoke drift. Around you, the city moves on. Carriages roll by with their horses blinking patiently in the rain. A woman leans out from a window to beat a rug, and the dust rises in a small puff that mingles with the fog. Someone shouts, someone laughs, you walk. Not because you have anywhere left to go, but because stopping would mean deciding what comes next. The choice has been circling for hours now, maybe longer. You told yourself you'd wait for the right moment. Wait until the rain let up. Wait until your head cleared. Wait until your pride softened into something less brittle. But there is no pride left. Not really. Just a vague memory of it, like a song half forgotten. You've passed 3 churches and not stepped inside. Not for prayer, not even for warmth. You've stood near the public pump and not begged a drink. You've squatted in the lee of a crumbling wall and not spoken to another soul. The city is full of people, but none of them are yours, and none of them would notice if you simply folded yourself into a doorway and vanished. So you weigh the only option left, the one every pauper weighs eventually, the workhouse. They say it's shelter, they say it's food, they say it keeps you alive through winter, and maybe, in the strictest sense, they're not wrong, but everyone also knows the other things. the things they don't print on the notice boards. That once you go in, you don't come out the same. That you're no longer a person, just an entry in a ledger. That your clothes are taken, your name reduced, your body scrubbed like filth, and your soul filed under undeserving. You've heard stories. The boy who tried to run, the girl who never came back from the infirmary, the old man who muttered scripture until they shut him away. But stories don't fill a stomach, and stories don't stop the cold from settling into your bones like rot. You tell yourself it's just for the night, one night, long enough to eat something hot, to lie down without having to keep one eye open. You can leave in the morning. That's what you say, again and again, as if saying it makes it truer. You think of the stone walls, the endless corridors, the smell of lime and unwashed breath, but your body has already decided. Your feet are turning slowly toward the parish edge. Your hands are already stuffed into your sleeves. Your mind protests, but weakly, as though it too is tired of the cold. The buildings thin as you walk south. The shop fronts give way to warehouses, and the windows grow narrower, meaner. It's quieter here. The rain falls softer somehow, the way it does when the world runs out of reasons to pretend it's doing anything else. The alley is where you were told it would be. Behind the tannery, past the broken fence, beneath the painted sign too faded to read. You step into it without ceremony. No one stops you. No one asks what you're doing. No one wants to know. You see the gate before you hear the wind shift. It rises out of the fog like a punishment, high iron and as joyless as a headstone. No lanterns, no guards, just a bolt and the dark outline of stone walls behind it. There's no plaque, no welcome, just the knowledge in your gut that this is the place where people go when nothing else is left. You step closer, slowly. The gravel under your feet shifts damply. The drizzle has soaked through your collar now, and you don't bother brushing it away. You stand there for a moment, not for drama, but because it's the last second of silence you'll have for some time. The last second where you still belong to yourself. Then you raise your hand and you knock. The door opens just enough for a single eye to appear behind it. Then the bolt clunks back, the hinges groan, and the whole heavy thing swings inward with reluctant force. A man stands there in a coat too small for his frame, face ruddy from the damp and eyes flat as slate. He doesn't ask your name. He doesn't ask your purpose. He just looks at you, once, top to bottom, and then steps aside, already turning on his heel. You're expected to follow. Inside, the air smells of stone, soot and boiled cloth. It is neither warm nor cold, just close in the way that cellars are. The door closes behind you, louder than necessary, and the echo carries down the corridor. No one speaks. Your boots squeak faintly on the floor, slick with something you don't care to identify. The porter walks ahead with no backward glance, his steps slow but sure, as if there's no version of the future where you don't trail behind him like a dog on a rope. You're brought to a small vestibule, where a long desk stretches across the room like a low wall. Behind it sits a man with spectacles and a ledger open in front of him, a quill balanced between two fingers. He does not look up. A second man stands to the side with his arms crossed and a key ring at his belt. You're motioned to stop just short of the desk. Not told, just motioned. A flat palm in the air, then silence. You stop. Name? The man behind the desk asks, though he still hasn't raised his head. You give it. He repeats it, slowly, writing it out with care. Age? You guess. Trade? You say something vague, something true enough. It doesn't seem to matter. Each answer is absorbed without reaction. Like ink into paper. He asks if you've been admitted before. You haven't. He nods once and then you're assigned a number. It's written at the top of the page in large, deliberate script. It's not yours. It doesn't feel like it belongs to anyone. But it will follow you now. You're told to remove your boots, then your coat, then your shirt. You hesitate, out of habit, not defiance. The man with the keys uncrosses his arms. That's all it takes. You unbutton peel, and step out of everything you arrived in. The clothes are taken from your hands and dropped into a wooden box without ceremony. The box is slid out of view beneath the desk. No one tells you whether you'll ever see it again. The floor is colder now. The air hits your skin in unfamiliar places. You're led to a side room with a basin in the centre and a small iron stove in the corner that hasn't been lit in some time. A tub stands off to one side, filled with water that isn't quite steaming. The woman who waits there doesn't greet you. She's older, with sleeves rolled high and an apron stiff from years of soap and splashes. She taps the side of the tub with a stick and gestures. That's all. You understand. The water is not hot. It's not freezing either, which feels like a small mercy, but it doesn't welcome you. It scalds where your skin is raw and does nothing where you need warmth most. You lower yourself in with caution, limbs trembling slightly from exposure and nerves. The woman moves quickly, efficiently, and without cruelty, but also without kindness. She scrubs, hard. Your scalp is doused, soaped, scraped with her nails. A dull razor is run along the edges of your hair, behind the ears, down the nape. She doesn't ask if you've had lice, she assumes. A thin layer of dead skin and dirt floats on the surface by the time she's done. You're told to stand. You do. The water streams down your legs and pools at your feet before being brushed toward a drain. A stiff towel is thrown at you, more sackcloth than fabric, and you dry off as best you can. There's no mirror in the room. Only the metal rim of the basin offers a distorted glimpse of your face. Paler now, more sallow, eyes too wide for their sockets. You barely recognise yourself. A uniform is laid out on a bench. Trousers, shirt, vest and cap. All are greyish, all are coarse. The fabric scratches before you've even put it on. As you dress, you notice the faint outline of previous wearers, creases, frayed seams, a stain near the cuff that didn't come out in the last wash. It's not tailored, nor sized, just handed out like a punishment. When the cap goes on, it squeezes your temples. You feel smaller inside it, smaller and less real. Your feet are given no covering yet. The floor bites harder now that you're clean. The porter reappears to collect you and gestures down a side hall. It's narrow and dim, lit only by a single wall-mounted lamp and a high window with bars across the top. You pass a room with an open door. Inside, a row of benches faces a wall with nothing on it. Another room has crates of dried bread, stacked too neatly to be comforting. You are told where to walk, when to stop, when to move again. No one raises their voice, no one touches you, and yet the pressure to comply is unbearable in its silence. You sense it in the stillness of the corridors, in the way the walls seem too close together, in the constant sense that someone is watching, even when no one is in sight. It is not discipline by force, but by design. The corridor ends at another door. This one is thicker, darker, with scuffs along the bottom where boots have pushed against it. The porter opens it with a key, and a low creak echoes beyond. You're ushered inside. The room is long, low-ceilinged, and lined with benches that run along the walls. On those benches sit the others, men of various ages, shapes and levels of collapse. Some sit hunched, arms wrapped around themselves. Others sit straight, their backs rigid with effort. A few stare ahead without blinking. None speak. You're told to sit, you do. The bench is hard and the air here is warmer than the hallway, but thick with breath and unwashed fabric. The man beside you smells faintly of vinegar and something more earthy, more human. You try not to lean either way. No one looks at you for long. A few glance, then return to staring at the floor, or the walls, or nothing at all. You're not the newest here, not quite, but it wouldn't matter if you were. No introductions are made, no questions are asked. Everyone already knows what brought you here. Hunger, desperation, and the quiet, unspeakable failure of being poor for too long in a city that does not forgive. Your skin still prickles where the water touched it. Your scalp burns faintly from the soap. Your new clothes itch at the seams, and bind slightly when you breathe too deep. But you sit still, because stillness is safety here. Stillness is what's expected. Movement draws attention. Attention draws consequence. The porter leaves without a word, and the door swings shut behind him with a dull thud. You are alone, but never alone. You do not know how long you will sit here. You do not ask. The others do not speak, and neither do you. The light from the high window is beginning to fade. You shift on the bench, scratching absently at the inside of your sleeve, where the wool itches most. The fabric bites more now that it's drying against your skin, stiff at the seams and sour with soap residue. You gave up trying to find a comfortable position 20 minutes ago, or what felt like 20 minutes. Time is beginning to flatten into something formless. The others on the bench around you sit in similar silence, shoulders drawn in, faces hollow and indifferent. A few stare ahead, a few watch their feet. One man near the door keeps tapping the edge of the bench with his fingers, over and over, until a staff member steps in briefly just to still his hand with a look. He stops tapping. He doesn't resume. The room smells like the rest of the place. Wet wool, coal smoke, shaved hair, and bodies kept close for too long. The ceiling is low, and the only window is too high to reach, its panes frosted over with condensation. You haven't seen daylight since you entered. The gas lamp overhead hums faintly, and the longer you sit beneath it, the more you begin to feel like an insect pinned beneath glass. From the hallway, a voice calls out a name, then a number. The bench shifts slightly as one of the men beside you rises, adjusting his cap and walking stiffly toward the door. No one speaks, no one looks up. The process is simple, practiced, stripped of anything unnecessary. A name to anchor the mind, a number to keep track of the body. The man disappears. The bench resettles. You expect to wait longer, but then your own name is spoken. A beat later, your number follows. The voice says both without emotion. Not cruel, not impatient, just mechanical. You rise, your legs ache from the stillness, and your back has begun to tighten in ways you hadn't noticed. You glance at the others on the bench, but no one meets your eye. No one ever does. The officer in the doorway watches only long enough to confirm you're moving, then turns and walks away. You're meant to follow. The corridor beyond is colder than you remember. The stones underfoot have grown slick again, likely from the condensation that creeps in from the ground. The walls are close, and the flickering gaslight makes the plaster ripple in your peripheral vision. You're led down one narrow hall, past a door with a barred window, just high enough to see through if you tip your head. Inside, a group of women sit in silence. One holds a child in her lap. The child clutches a ragged bundle and stares blankly at the door. The woman's hand rests gently on the back of the child's head, unmoving. You don't linger. No one is permitted to. At the next intersection, another man waits. He holds a clipboard and wears a coat that hangs like armour. He doesn't look up right away. When he does, it's only briefly, long enough to glance at your face, then down to whatever's written beside your number. His voice is flat and practiced, each sentence delivered like it's been spoken 100 times before, and will be spoken 100 times again. You are informed that if you entered with family, you will not be seeing them. Wives and daughters are processed in the women's wing. Sons are placed in the juvenile ward if they're young enough, or separated into the men's dormitory if they're not. These rules are absolute. No mingling between wings, no visits without formal written requests, no guarantees that those requests will be read, let alone answered. If you're caught speaking through a fence or across a yard, there will be punishment. The officer does not elaborate. He doesn't have to. The clipboard is tapped once. A stick is raised and used to point. One corridor for women, another for children. You're to go straight. You are no longer part of a household. That concept is behind you now. In here, you are not father or brother or husband or son. You are an inmate. A man alone, reclassified, processed, refiled. Your role is not to feel, but to follow. The officer turns, and once again, you're expected to keep pace without prompting. The silence between you is absolute. You can hear your own breath. You can hear your heartbeat in your ears. Around the next corner, you pass a room where the shutters are half closed, and the light inside glows faintly over a ledger book left open on a desk. A chair creaks, but no one appears. Further down, another corridor branches off into darkness. Somewhere beyond it, a muffled voice is raised. Then silence too quickly. You don't flinch. You keep walking. The stone walls are damp now. You feel it through the soles of your boots. The floor slopes almost imperceptibly downward, as though funneling all movement to one unavoidable place. You glance up once to find a window, small, barred and crusted with dirt, but no light shines through. It might be evening now, it might be night. The place has swallowed the hours. Eventually you reach a vestibule with a low ceiling and a second gate. A man stands beside it, broad-shouldered and silent, a tarnished badge pinned to his chest. He doesn't acknowledge you beyond stepping aside and turning a key in the lock. The gate opens inward with a reluctant groan, metal scraping stone. A blast of warmer air greets you, warmer but thicker, like breath exhaled from too many lungs into too little space. You step through. The hallway beyond is dim, its gas sconces burning low. The ceiling dips slightly, and the air carries the sour traces of sweat, boiled cabbage, and chamber pots, long overdue for emptying. You are now within the men's wing. You walk past closed doors, some with cracks of light beneath them, some utterly dark. Behind one, you hear coughing. Behind another, nothing at all. Occasionally, a pair of eyes peeks through a slit in a door, then disappears without a word. The officer guiding you doesn't stop, doesn't turn, doesn't speak. He knows the way too well. The corridor winds left, then right, until even your sense of direction is useless. The floorboards creak now with each step. One hallway has plaster peeling from the walls, in long curls, revealing brickwork mottled with mildew. There are no decorations here, no signs, just numbered routines carried out behind closed doors, none of which seem to open for you. Finally, the officer slows. He stops just before a heavy wooden door. There's no sign on it. No handle, just a latch and a lock. It's unmarked but unmistakable. You know what's behind it before you're told. The dormitory. The door creaks open into the men's sleeping ward, and for a moment, the only sound is that low, groaning hinge, followed by your own footsteps. The air hits you first, not with force, but with saturation. It's not cold, not precisely, just dense, heavier than the corridors, heavier than the holding rooms. It clings to your nostrils and settles behind your eyes, carrying with it the unmistakable blend of old sweat, unwashed wool, and chamber pots that haven't been emptied quite soon enough. Beneath it all lingers something faintly sour, a decay that isn't strong enough to name, but strong enough to notice. You breathe through your mouth, and even that doesn't help. The room is long, too long. You lose track of the far end before you've even stepped fully inside. Row after row of low cot stretches from wall to wall, shoulder to shoulder, end to end, forming a pattern of repetition so perfect it begins to feel unreal. There is no privacy, no space, no sense of separation, just men lying in lines, each one wearing the same colour, the same shape, the same exhaustion. There's a rhythm to the sound, snoring from the far corner, coughing from the centre, a faint murmur of someone shifting in their sleep. A few groans rise and fall in the darkness, but no one speaks. Speaking is not part of the arrangement here. You're led in by a staff member who doesn't bother looking back to see if you're following. He gestures toward a cot near the outer wall, where the ceiling dips slightly and the corners of the stone are darker with moisture. You walk carefully, avoiding stray boots, a discarded tin mug, and the foot of a man who lies with one leg off the edge of his bed. He doesn't stir as you pass. You wonder if he's asleep, or simply too tired to move anymore. You wonder if you'll look like that tomorrow. Your cot is not special. It is like the others, narrow, wooden framed and sagging slightly at the centre. The mattress is thin, barely padded, with a patchwork of stains that tell more stories than you want to know. You don't see any sheets, just a coarse grey blanket folded at the foot, stiff from repeated washing and never quite dry. The pillow is more suggestion than substance, flattened and clumped like a sack of old oats someone forgot to empty. You glance down the row again. No one has better. You sit first, slowly. The wood creaks beneath you, and for a moment you think it might give way, but it holds. The man in the cot beside yours stirs, rolls onto his side, and lets out a long, uneven breath. He does not acknowledge you. That's the rule here. No one welcomes the new arrivals. No one offers advice. Everyone is too tired, too hungry, too worn down by their own business to take on yours. You are alone, even in a room full of bodies. The wall beside your cot is mottled with dark patches, mould most likely, growing in the cracks between stones where water has seeped in from above. It has spread in looping, branching patterns like veins, and the smell near it is mustier than elsewhere in the room. You turn away from it, but there's little escape. Every angle presents something. Another man's boots, the outline of a ribcage beneath a too thin shirt, a cough too wet to ignore, or a pair of eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. You let your gaze settle on the floor. There is no lamp on your end of the ward. The light from the corridor doesn't quite reach here, and what little illumination there is comes from two gas sconces mounted near the centre of the room, their flames low and flickering. Shadows stretch in every direction. They shift constantly, bending across cots and faces like restless hands. You try not to look too long at any one shape. You're tired enough to start seeing things that aren't there. You remove your cap and hold it in your lap. Your hands are still raw from earlier. The tips of your fingers are puckered from the wash, and the knuckles are beginning to crack again from the dry air. You want to rub them together for warmth, but the movement might attract attention, and you're not ready for that yet. You set the cap beside your cot and lie back slowly. The mattress does not yield. It protests. It pushes back in all the wrong places and sags in others. Your shoulders settle unevenly. The blanket, once pulled over you, does nothing to stop the draft that runs down the length of the room like a ghost looking for something it lost. You shift once, then again, and finally give up on comfort. No one else here has found it either. The man 2 cots down begins to cough, deep racking sounds that tear through the stillness like boots on gravel. No one flinches, no one moves to help. The coughs die down eventually, replaced by a wheeze and then silence. Somewhere at the far end of the room, someone mutters a few words under their breath. Maybe a prayer, maybe something less coherent. It fades quickly. You glance up at the ceiling. It's low enough that you could reach it with a stick, but too high to feel anything like shelter. The beams above are dusty, old and bowed with age. You wonder how many winters they've endured. You wonder if they've ever collapsed. You wonder if it would matter. A rustling sound from the other side of the row catches your attention. Someone adjusting their blanket. Someone scratching at their scalp. Someone mumbling in a language you don't recognise. You close your eyes and try to block it out. But the noise is everywhere, not loud, but persistent. Breathing, coughing, shifting, muttering, groaning. It all blends together into something just short of silence, but never peace. You roll onto your side, facing the wall. The mould is closer now. The smell of damp stone fills your nostrils, and you pull the blanket up over your shoulder to shield yourself from it. It doesn't help. Your elbow brushes the edge of the cot, and a splinter catches your sleeve. You tug it free without thinking. You're still fully clothed. Everyone is. No one undresses here. There's nowhere to put your clothes and nothing underneath them. Stripping down would be an invitation. To the cold, to illness, to shame. So you lie stiffly in your uniform, buttons pressing into your ribs. fabric scratching at your knees. You try to pull the blanket tighter around your legs, but it's too short, and your ankles remain exposed to the air. Your stomach growls, though it has nothing left to digest. It folds in on itself, trying to make do with the memory of food. You breathe shallowly through your nose, but the air here carries too much of everything. You don't want to know what's in it. You try not to think about the last time the windows were opened, if they ever were. You wonder how many men have died in this room. You wonder if anyone noticed when they did. A distant bell rings somewhere outside the ward. Not loud, not urgent, just a dull clang, like something forgotten, signalling nothing you need to know. The man beside you exhales sharply in his sleep, then rolls onto his back. The movement causes his bed to creak, and yours shifts in response, the two frames touching slightly at the corners. You don't move. It would only draw more noise. Your eyes adjust slowly to the gloom, picking out the shapes of shoulders, elbows, knees, all of them in the same position, all of them twisted by the same effort to make something tolerable out of what can't be fixed. You stare until the shapes blur again, not into darkness, but into a uniform greyness that presses in from all sides. You're cold, but not shivering. The heat from the others creates a shallow warmth that never quite reaches your skin. The air is too still, too used, too full of breath that has passed through too many lungs. You take shallow breaths to keep from gagging. Your mouth tastes like wool and copper. You try to sleep. You don't know if you'll manage it. You don't know if anyone here does, but you lie there anyway, because that's what's expected. Because movement would be noticed. Because you're tired. Because you're too hungry to think. Because your body, even now, still believes that if it closes its eyes, something might be better when they open. You lie down fully clothed, cold despite the press of bodies around you, and try not to breathe too deeply. A bell clangs, not a pleasant chime, not even a clear note, just a dull iron sound that rings through the corridors like a warning rather than a summons. You flinch despite yourself, and so does someone else. Footsteps begin to stir above you, then beside you, and then all around. Doors open in sequence, voices call out commands too low to catch clearly, and bodies start to move in rhythm, slow but automatic, as if the sound of that bell has been drilled into them until response is the only option. The officer at the top of the stairs says nothing. He doesn't need to. He jerks his chin toward the hallway, and you move. Your legs are stiff from sitting, and your knees crack with every step. The hallway is even darker now, though the sconces are still burning low along the walls. You join a line already forming, men pressed shoulder to shoulder, all in the same grey uniforms, all with the same dull look in their eyes. No one speaks, no one makes eye contact. You shuffle forward with the others. The corridor narrows as it turns and descends again. The air gets thicker. You smell it before you see it. Something like overcooked grain and standing water, undercut by the faintest whiff of tallow and burnt iron. It's not a good smell, but it's not enough to turn your stomach. You think maybe that's the point. If it stank, you could justify not eating. If it smelled rich, it might spark resistance. This is somewhere in between, just unpleasant enough to lower expectations. The line moves past a half-open door where two men in brown aprons stand behind a large metal pot. One grips the handle of a ladle with fingers stained the colour of old newspaper. The other counts heads. The clank of bowls on the table beside them forms a steady rhythm. One man in, one bowl placed, one ladle served. Repeat. The process is stripped of personality. No words, no gestures, just units processed in sequence. When it's your turn, you step up to the table. A dented tin bowl is shoved toward your chest. You grab it reflexively, thumb slipping slightly on the rim where something oily clings to the metal. The ladle is dipped into the pot and scraped along the bottom, then dumped into your bowl with a slap more than a pour. What lands there is greyish, lumpy, and smells faintly of wet ash. It's not hot, not cold either, just warm enough to be food in theory. You're waved on before you can get a second look. Behind you, the next man moves up. The line continues without pause. You follow the shuffling queue into the dining hall, a low-ceilinged chamber with rows of long benches and tables stained with years of use. The floor underfoot is sticky in places, slick in others. A single lantern hangs at each end, casting flickering yellow light that makes the room feel smaller than it is. Shadows drift across the walls like moths with nowhere left to fly. You slide onto the end of a bench beside two men you've never seen before and will likely never speak to. Their heads are down, bowls already in hand, spoons clutched like tools rather than utensils. The bench is slick with grease or polish or both, and the table smells faintly of iron and damp bread. You set your bowl down in front of you. You don't need to be told there will be no cutlery for you tonight. Across the room, two staff members patrol the aisle slowly. Their boots make a steady thudding sound on the stone floor, and their eyes drift from face to face. Not in curiosity, but in search of disobedience. One carries a short stick. He taps it against his leg, then against the corner of a bench. The sound is enough to silence a cough before it finishes forming. You understand the rules without needing them explained. You lift the bowl and tilt it to your lips. The contents slide forward slowly. Reluctant to move, you tip it further until something reaches your tongue. Warm, gritty, tasteless. You swallow. Your stomach reacts before your mind does, clenching around the food like a hand desperate to keep hold. You take another mouthful, then another. The texture is the worst part, lumpy and smooth all at once, as though someone tried to stretch flour with water until both gave up. The man beside you finishes first. He sets his bowl down without a sound, then folds his hands in his lap. He stares straight ahead. You resist the urge to ask how long he's been here. The question feels dangerous, too human, too close to conversation. You lower your eyes and keep eating. Every few bites, you scrape your fingers around the rim of the bowl to catch what the spoon would have left. Your fingers come back coated in paste. You lick them clean. No one reacts. This is what everyone does. Talking is discouraged. So is wasting food. You don't know what happens to someone who leaves food uneaten, but you don't want to find out. The staff continue to circle, their gaze sweeping the room like slow pendulums. One pauses behind a man who hesitates too long between bites. A single word, sharp and quiet, is all it takes. The man resumes eating, faster this time. The staff member walks on. A silence settles in again, thicker than before. The longer you sit, the more the meal becomes routine. Your mind dulls. The taste becomes background noise. Your body moves on its own. Lift, tilt, swallow, scrape. You don't think of what's in the gruel or where it came from. You don't wonder how many times this pot has been reused without scrubbing, or how long the same ladle has sat in that same scum. You just keep eating because that's what is expected. Somewhere near the back of the room, someone coughs, a deep, wet sound. No one looks up. You finish the last mouthful, the final dregs sticking to the bottom of the bowl, like dried paste. You run your finger along the edge, then across the base, scooping up what little remains. It's barely enough to fill your mouth, but you do it anyway. Your stomach doesn't feel full. It doesn't even feel satisfied. But the hollowness inside you is quieter than it was. A bell clangs again, 2 quick strikes, the signal to rise. Everyone stands in near unison, as if connected by the same wire. You follow, bowl in hand, and file into another line. The bowls are collected at the doorway, dropped into a tub that smells of old metal and dishwater. No one washes them now. That comes later. If you're unlucky, that might be your job. The line disperses once the bowls are gone. No words are exchanged. No one says whether the meal is over. You are expected to know. You return the way you came, back through the narrow hallway, back past the storage closets, and the corridor with the barred window, now dark. Your steps are slower now. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because there's nothing left to hurry toward. You glance once at the men walking beside you. None of them look back. You could walk beside them for a year and never hear their names. They are uniforms, numbers, habits, just like you. At the turn toward the dormitory stairs, you pause, just for a second, and feel the last trace of warmth fade from your chest. It wasn't heat, not really, just the echo of something warm enough to trick the body into thinking it had eaten. The moment passes. You reach the stairwell and descend again, each step slower than the last. Your hands twitch slightly, but it's not from cold, it's the hunger, shifting under your skin, waiting to return. You scrape the bowl clean with your fingers, even though it barely touched your hunger. After the meal, there is no time to linger, not that anyone tries. Another bell clangs, this time shorter, sharper. The moment the last bowl is deposited, the lines begin to form again. You follow without instruction, muscle memory taking over, where thought has no place. The staff don't speak, they don't need to. A gesture here, a tilt of the head there, and the crowd begins to shuffle in a new direction. Down a corridor you haven't yet seen. Your limbs are heavier now, not from food, that was barely nourishment, but from the slow exhaustion that's beginning to soak into your bones. You walk because you must. You don't know where you're going at first. No one says the word chapel. It isn't framed as worship, or comfort, or sanctuary. It's just the next step in the routine. The hallway grows narrower as you move, the lamps further apart. Somewhere in the walls, pipes groan. The man in front of you stumbles once and catches himself with a hand against the wall, but he doesn't fall. That would take too much energy. You glance at the floor and keep your eyes there. The chapel isn't what you expect. It's not a place of beauty or reverence. No stained glass, no grand altar, no warmth. Just another rectangular room, stone-floored and half-lit, with benches laid out in rows, and a raised platform at the far end. The walls are bare save for a single wooden cross hung slightly crooked above the platform. The light flickers against it as you enter, casting uneven shadows that make the wood seem warped and wrong. You're ushered toward a bench near the back and sit without protest. The wood is cold beneath you. It creaks under your weight, as if resenting even this small burden. Around you, other men file in. The silence is absolute. A few cough quietly into their sleeves. One man mutters something that might be a prayer, or a tick. No one responds. Once the room is full, a door at the side opens, and the chaplain appears. He is not dressed like the others, no uniform, just a long black coat that reaches past his knees, and a collar turned too high. His hair is thinning at the crown, and he carries a book under one arm. He doesn't look at the men, he doesn't need to. His posture tells you that he already knows who you are, not as individuals, but as a type, as a mass. He mounts the steps to the platform slowly, turns to face the room, and opens the book with a dramatic flourish. He does not greet you. He begins to speak. The words are familiar, even if you've never heard this version before. Sin, idleness, intemperance, ungodliness. These are the causes of poverty, he explains. These are the weights you have tied around your own necks. You are here not because the world has failed you, but because you have failed yourselves, failed your families, your neighbours, your God. You are not to seek pity. You are not to seek blame elsewhere. The workhouse is not a punishment, he insists. It is a chance for redemption, a place where your character can be rebuilt through discipline, humility, and faith. You nod when others do. Not because you agree, but because it is safer than dissent. You keep your eyes fixed on the wall just above his shoulder. The cross there seems to tilt a little further each time you glance back at it. The chaplain's voice is even, almost gentle, but the words themselves carry no softness. You are described as fallen, wayward, feckless, slothful. Your very presence in this room is proof, he says, of your failure to live within the moral bounds of society. You've heard sermons before, but not like this. There is no comfort here, no grace, no invitation to return, only condemnation, followed by conditional tolerance. You are here because it is cheaper to keep you locked up than to let you freeze in the street. You are reminded several times of how fortunate you are to have a roof, a bed, a meal, and work. You are told to be grateful. That word repeats more than any other. Grateful for bread, grateful for rules, grateful for the staff who enforce them, grateful for the opportunity to correct the path your sinful nature has led you down. You hear a man cough somewhere to your left. The chaplain pauses, eyes flicking in that direction, but says nothing. Then he continues. He reads from scripture now, something about labour and righteousness, but it blurs with the rest. His voice begins to drone. Not monotonous exactly, just polished, performed. You wonder how many times he's delivered this sermon, how many years he's been assigned to this duty. Does he believe what he's saying, or does he simply enjoy the ritual of saying it? Either way, it doesn't matter. He has authority. He has a platform. He has the book. Around you, the other men remain still. Some stare at their hands. Some keep their eyes on the cross. A few have their heads bowed, not in prayer, but in submission, or sleep. You feel your own body start to slump forward, not from disrespect, but from the simple weight of it all. The room is warm in a stagnant way, like breath trapped in fabric, and your stomach has begun to twist now that it realises the gruel wasn't enough. You shift slightly on the bench, trying not to creak the wood. The chaplain shifts gears again. Now he speaks of hope, of rehabilitation, of the possibility, distant though it may be, of rejoining proper society. But that future, he says, must be earned. Through labour, through obedience, through moral clarity. You wonder if anyone in this room still believes in that future. You wonder if he does. The sermon ends without fanfare, no closing prayer, no benediction, just the snap of the book shutting and the soft creak of the chaplain's shoes as he turns and disappears through the same door he entered. No eye contact, no farewell, no acknowledgement that the room ever contained people at all. For a moment no one moves. Then one of the staff by the door clears his throat, quiet but firm. The men rise in rows, not all at once, but in a sequence that's been trained into them. You follow. Your legs are stiff again, and your knees ache from the cold. No one speaks, no one whispers, even the coughing has stopped. The only sound is the dull scrape of boots on stone and the distant hiss of a gas lamp overhead. You file out into the corridor, head down, hands at your sides. The light outside the chapel is dimmer now. Time has passed, but it feels like nothing changed. The man in front of you has a tear in the back of his collar. The one behind you shuffles as though walking on splints. No one acknowledges anyone else. You're not certain what the sermon was meant to do. Inspire you? Shame you? Remind you of your place? Whatever it was, it leaves no trace in your chest. Just a quiet, heavy silence, and the echo of footsteps behind you as the line curves back toward the dormitories. The chapel door closes behind you, not loudly, just firmly, as if it were sealing something away or locking it in. You're back in the hall again, though it's hard to tell one corridor from another anymore. The walls all share the same dull grime, the same worn baseboards, the same flickering gas sconces that cast more shadow than light. The group of men you walked out of the chapel with is smaller now. Some must have been directed elsewhere. The remaining few, including you, are funneled toward a long bench outside an office with a warped wooden door. The floor here is scuffed with black marks that trace the movements of generations of boots, always stopping in the same place. You sit without being told, and so do the others. The man beside you smells faintly of tallow and something bitter, like soap scraped off old stone. No one speaks. At this point, you understand that silence is the safest language. Even your own thoughts have begun to dull, to quiet themselves in deference to the stillness required here. You scratch lightly at your collar, careful not to make it obvious. The wool itches constantly now, a small reminder that comfort is not part of this experience. After a few minutes, a staff member appears, a thin man with a thin voice and a long, narrow face that looks stretched by years of repetition. He doesn't sit. He doesn't introduce himself. He simply opens a small leather-bound folder, clears his throat, and begins to speak. The rules come all at once. You are to rise when told, sleep when told, eat when told, work when told, speak only when addressed, and never to staff unless required. You are not to loiter. You are not to laugh. You are not to weep, especially in public areas. The infirmary is for injuries and illness only. Emotional discomfort does not qualify. Any display of disorderly conduct will result in punishment, up to and including expulsion, without further shelter. Theft will not be tolerated, neither will idleness, neither will lateness, backtalk, uncleanliness, or deviation from the daily schedule. You're not allowed to barter, trade, or share personal possessions. You're not to question food portions, sleeping arrangements, job assignments, or disciplinary actions. If you do not understand an order, you're to comply first and ask later, preferably not at all. No gambling, no singing, no games, no notes passed, no stories told, no books without permission, no exiting assigned areas unless accompanied by staff. The lavatory is not a place to linger. The dormitory is not a place to socialise. The hallways are not your own. You try to keep up, but the list is relentless. Each rule folds over the last until they blend together, like the pages of a contract written to trap you. Some men nod along, others just stare at their feet. The man reading never looks up. His voice never changes. At one point, he mentions a man who broke curfew. No name is given, no age, no description, just a man who failed to return to his dormitory before lights out. The consequences were swift: removal from the premises, followed by what is called summary correction. You don't ask what that means. You don't need to. The implication hangs in the air like dust after a beating. The message is clear. Rules aren't guidelines here. They are borders, and crossing them has a cost. A second staff member enters the room and begins handing out small scraps of paper, each with printed lines and space at the bottom. You recognise this for what it is, the register. You're expected to sign, to acknowledge, to submit. A quill is passed down the row. When it reaches your hand, the shaft feels sticky, the feather half torn. You look down at the paper. You can't read it, not properly. Some words are familiar: name, conduct, duties, but the rest swim in unfamiliar curves. You've never been good with letters. School was a distant, brief affair, and what little you knew has long since drained away. It doesn't matter. There's a space at the bottom, and that's what they're watching for. You scrawl your mark, just an X. It feels both too small and too final. When the quill moves on, you glance down the line. Some men sign with a flourish. Others scratch out something like yours, simple, jagged, uncertain. The staff don't react. It isn't about literacy. It's about compliance. They need you in the book. They need you named, dated, recorded. They need proof that you agreed, whether you understood or not. Once the last man has finished, the rules are read once more. Not in full, just a few key lines, repeated for emphasis. You are not permitted to speak unless spoken to. You are not permitted to refuse work. You are not permitted to leave. If you do, you will not be readmitted. If you fail to follow instructions, your meals will be withheld. If you disrupt the order of the house, you will be removed. The phrase disrupt the order is left vague, and you know that's deliberate. When the speech ends, the man with the ledger closes it slowly and tucks it under his arm. The room feels quieter now, though no one has spoken. You realise your mouth is dry. Your fingers twitch slightly against your thigh. You keep them still. The staff members don't dismiss you. They just leave, one through the door behind the podium, the other down the corridor. You wait until someone at the far end of the bench begins to stand, then follow suit, careful not to make eye contact with anyone. You're not sure what expression your face is wearing now, but you know it's not your own. It's the face of someone who agrees, who submits, who understands the price of refusal. As you file back into the hallway, the noise of the building returns in fragments. A bucket being dragged, a boot scraping the floor, a door opening, closing, locking. The sounds aren't loud, but they seem sharper now, like you're hearing them for the first time. You wonder how many people are in this building, all following the same rules, all marked by the same ledger, all waiting for the same set of instructions that will carry them from 1 hour to the next. You pass by a staircase and glimpse the courtyard through a small high window. The sky outside is dim. Late afternoon, probably. It could just as easily be morning or dusk. Time doesn't pass here in hours. It passes in tasks. You have eaten, you have prayed, you have signed, you have submitted. The next stage will arrive when it's ready, and not a moment before. At the end of the corridor, a door waits half open. Beyond it, more stone, more benches, another line forming. The same postures, the same uniforms, the same dull faces braced against whatever part of the routine comes next. You walk toward it with your shoulders slightly hunched. You're not trying to look small, but your body has started to learn on its own. Less eye contact, fewer questions, slower steps. Obedience isn't just expected here, it's survival. You signed your name, or what passes for it. You put your mark in the book. You've agreed to the terms. That night, you don't sleep so much as lie still in the dark, waiting for the next bell. The rules have nested somewhere deep in your chest, pulsing with every breath, every twitch of the hands. You now keep folded to avoid offence. You're no longer thinking about what comes next, only what's expected of you when it does. Morning arrives before sleep has truly begun. It doesn't announce itself with light or birdsong or warmth, just a jolt, a hand on your shoulder, firm and cold, and a voice too quiet to carry feeling. You wake without opening your eyes at first, your mind fogged by the kind of rest that numbs rather than restores. There's a moment where you don't remember where you are, and then the stiffness in your joints reminds you. The smell of the dormitory, sour, stale, breath-warmed, is the same as it was hours ago, only heavier now, trapped under the damp blanket that clings to your chest. The other men stir in their beds, or at least those who are asleep. Some are already sitting upright, pulling on coats that never left their backs, fumbling for boots that were never removed. There's no speaking, no greeting, just the scrape of wood, the creak of cots and the distant clang of the morning bell echoing through the stone walls, like a summons from somewhere higher than here. The gas lights flicker back to life in the hallway, and the same boots that woke you begin tapping against the floor in a slow, deliberate rhythm. It's not quite a march, but it's close. You rise, knees stiff and spine crooked from the hours spent twisted in discomfort. Your shoulders ache from the way you curled into yourself, and your neck cracks when you straighten. The blanket is damp again, or perhaps it never dried. Either way, you fold it the way you're expected to and tuck it beneath the cot with care. You've learned already that neatness matters here, even if everything else is broken. The man in the bed beside yours does the same. His movements robotic, practiced. You haven't heard his voice yet. You file out of the dormitory with the others, feet shuffling along the stone corridor toward the main yard. The line curves and lengthens and folds in on itself like some slow-moving animal. You step outside and the rain meets you immediately. Thin but persistent, the kind that soaks through before you've had time to notice. The yard is wide, enclosed by high brick walls, stained black at the base from decades of runoff. Puddles gather in uneven dips across the stone ground. A pile of tools rests beneath a broken awning. Picks, hammers, baskets made of worn wood and rusted wire. You are handed one of each with no explanation. The man who gives it to you doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He points with the hammer. You follow the direction of his finger. The task is simple, but no less brutal for it. You're to break stones, not large ones, medium-sized pieces of rock hauled in from elsewhere, now sitting in heaps at the far end of the yard. You are to break them down to a finer size and carry them across the yard to a second pile. From there, others will carry them back to the original spot. The labour doesn't serve a purpose. There's no construction underway, no road being laid. It's work for work's sake, effort stripped of outcome. You learn this quickly and stop wondering why. Your hands aren't ready for it. The first few blows glance off the rock, sending shocks through your wrists and into your shoulders. The rain slicks the handle of the hammer, and you nearly drop it once before gripping harder. You glance around. No one seems to struggle, though you know they must be. Their faces give nothing away. Some strike rhythmically, like clockwork. Others hunch over their baskets, transferring gravel in slow handfuls, back bent and eyes glazed. By the end of the first hour, the blisters have already begun to form. They start as warmth in the pads of your palms, then swell into pain as the skin separates from itself. You shift your grip to avoid the worst of it, but there's no real escape. Your knuckles grow raw, your fingers throb. You wipe your hands against your trousers and keep going. No one stops, no one checks. The only time someone moves differently is when the staff pass through the yard, their boots louder and cleaner than yours, their eyes scanning for signs of slowness. A man 3 rows over pauses to catch his breath, and within seconds, a stick raps against his shoulder. Not hard, just a warning. He resumes immediately. The rain continues. It seeps into your collar, down your spine, along the backs of your knees. Your hair is soaked, though you stopped noticing an hour ago. The rhythm of the hammer begins to numb you. Lift, drop, crack, scoop, carry, dump, turn, lift again. It's mechanical, it's exhausting. You stop thinking after a while, and your mind floats somewhere behind your eyes, watching your body from a distance. Your arms burn, your thighs ache. Your back begins to tighten in long, steady knots. You wonder, in the vaguest terms, how long you've been at it. There's no clock, no change in light. Just the yard and the stones, and the sound of hammers clapping against rock like teeth grinding through a meal that never ends. You lose track of how many baskets you've filled. You begin to understand why the task exists. It isn't about stone, it's about obedience, it's about transformation. Making something sharp and heavy into something smaller and duller. At one point, you glance up and catch the eye of a man across the yard. His mouth is set in a line. His eyes are blank. He doesn't nod. He doesn't look away. He just sees you for half a second and then returns to his work. That's the closest you've come to recognition all morning. You switch hands. It hurts less for a moment, and then worse. The blisters on your left hand haven't had time to form properly, so the skin breaks faster. Blood smears across the handle. You wipe it against your thigh and grip harder. One of the staff watches you from a distance, arms crossed. You don't look at him again. Eventually someone calls out. Not a word, just a sound. Sharp, commanding. You drop the hammer by instinct. A bell rings once, faint and distant. Around you, others begin to straighten. One man collapses onto a crate. Another stumbles as he stands. A third sits down with both hands on his knees, eyes closed. No one speaks. You don't know if you're allowed to. You don't want to find out. Your hands hang at your sides, trembling slightly. You flex your fingers and feel the skin pull tight across the blisters. One has already torn. The sting is manageable, but it will be worse later. Your shoulders sag. Your lower back hums with pressure. You feel like someone has tied weights to your ribs. You're not hungry, exactly, but your body is hollow in a different way now, emptied out through your limbs. The man beside you lowers himself to the ground and sits with his legs straight out, breathing heavily. You realise he hasn't spoken all day. Not a word during the march, not a grunt during the labour, just silent movement, repetition, survival. You wonder if he was ever like you, new, uncertain, afraid. You wonder if you'll end up like him. Eventually, you're herded back into the hall for what they call midday rations, though you can't say for certain what time it is anymore. The bell tells you when to eat. That's enough. The blisters on your palms have broken, and the sleeves of your uniform stick to your skin where the rain soaked through and the fabric rubbed raw. The labour has left you empty in a new way. Not hungry in the usual sense, but drained. Like something inside has been wrung out and folded back wrong. You move slowly, not because you choose to, but because there's no other pace left in you. Around you, the others march at the same rhythm. If anyone feels differently, they hide it well. The hall smells the same as yesterday, as this morning. As always, stale bread, boiled grain, mildew, and the faint iron tang of tin bowls passed too many times through too many hands. You file into place without needing to be told. The body remembers even when the mind refuses to. You hold out your hands. A bowl is placed in them. Gruel again, or something like it. Warm but flavourless, heavy but unsatisfying. You don't ask what it's made from. You don't look too closely. The bench you take is the same one you took yesterday. Or it might be. It's hard to tell. They all feel the same. Slick, warped, slightly too narrow for comfort. You sit. You eat. You don't think about the food, only about getting it down. Around you, dozens of others do the same. No talking, no eye contact, just the quiet clatter of spoons and the scrape of bowls being pulled closer. The occasional cough stifled into a sleeve. It feels like a ritual, not a communal one, just one performed in parallel, like monks in a cloister, but without the faith. But today, something shifts. Maybe it's the fatigue dulling your senses. Maybe it's the silence stretching too long, making you look for something to hold on to. Whatever it is, you begin to notice the others. Not just as shadows, not just as bodies bent to task, but as people. Or what remains of people after the workhouse has worn through the outer layers. The man across from you is older than he looks. His beard is patchy, his eyes sunken, and his back remains hunched even when he sits. He mutters under his breath as he eats. Not words exactly, just numbers. Repeated softly, like a prayer. You can't tell what they mean. They're not in order. You wonder if he was once a clerk, a shopkeeper, a school teacher. Something with ledgers and chalk. Something with structure. Maybe he's trying to rebuild it now, one number at a time, just to keep something in his head from crumbling. To your left, a boy no older than 15 eats with his elbows pressed tightly to his ribs. He holds the spoon awkwardly, as though his fingers don't work quite right. When he shifts, you catch a glimpse of his hands, red, swollen, the fingers curled unnaturally inward. Frostbite, old, badly healed. He must have been on the streets a long time before this. His spoon slips once and he catches it in his lap. He doesn't look up. He doesn't react at all. 2 seats down from him is a man in a tattered greatcoat, the kind issued to soldiers years ago. It's too big in the shoulders and too short at the wrists. One boot is standard issue, the other is patched leather, wrapped in rags. He eats methodically, every bite measured, eyes straight ahead. His left hand trembles, his right doesn't. You wonder what he's seen, what he's done, and why the coat still matters enough for him to wear it here. Maybe it's all he has left that says he was anything but this. Further down the table, 2 men sit so close together, their arms touch. One whispers to the other between bites, the barest thread of sound. You don't catch the words. A staff member walks past and the whispering stops instantly. The men freeze in perfect stillness. When the staff member moves on, they don't resume. The risk is too great. Even companionship is suspect here. You begin to see more details, like cracks in a wall you've been staring at too long. A man with a sewn-up sleeve, where an arm should be. Another with eyes that flicker constantly, never resting on one thing for more than a second. A third who eats without chewing, swallowing mechanically, as though he's long forgotten how to enjoy food. No one here speaks unless forced. No one moves quickly. Every gesture is cautious, weighed against the invisible ledger that governs punishment. You realise that most of them have been here far longer than you. It's in the way they sit, the way they eat, the way they never glance toward the exits. You don't know how long it takes to become like that. Weeks, months, maybe less. But you see it clearly now. The difference between those newly broken and those long settled into their quiet ruin. Across the hall, a staff member stands near the door, arms folded, eyes sweeping the room in slow arcs. His presence is less threatening than it is suppressive. He doesn't need to raise his voice or wield a stick. His silence is enough. It blankets the room, smooths down every impulse before it surfaces. You watch the man beside him drop his spoon. He picks it up with slow, deliberate care and continues eating without a glance in any direction. You go back to your own bowl. There's not much left. The gruel has begun to cool, forming a skin that pulls away from the tin at the edges. You scrape the sides with your spoon and catch the last dregs, though your appetite faded before you sat down. Hunger has become something you carry now, like damp in your clothes. It doesn't spike anymore. It just lingers. You glance down at your spoon before setting it aside. It's bent slightly at the handle, the surface warped, probably from years of use. But in the shallow curve of the bowl, you catch your reflection. It's not clear, not a mirror, just a shimmer of features, but it's enough. Enough to see the dirt beneath your eyes, the cracked skin at your lips, the sag of your jaw. Your eyes are shadowed. Your cheekbones look sharper than you remember. Your hair lies flat and limp, clinging to your forehead. You stare at the image for longer than you mean to. It's not that you don't recognise the face, it's that you haven't seen it in so long. You'd half forgotten what it looked like. There are no mirrors on the street, no reason to check. Days blur together when survival is the only measure of time. Now, in this warped glint of tin, you're forced to look again, and the changes are harder to ignore. You tilt the spoon slightly, trying to correct the angle, to make sense of the reflection. But the face doesn't improve. It doesn't become familiar. It just exists, worn, hollowed, shaped by weather and hunger and silence. You set the spoon down slowly and draw your hands into your lap. You've already learned not to cry here. You've learned not to let emotion take shape, not even internally, but something in your chest shifts, tightens. Not grief, not panic, just a quiet pressure behind the ribs, like the recognition of distance travelled without ever moving. Like the space between who you used to be and who you are now has grown wider than you can measure. The others continue eating, still silent, still methodical. You wonder how many of them remember their own reflections. You wonder how long it's been for them, how many seasons passed before they stopped needing to know what their faces looked like. You wonder if it matters anymore. The bell will ring again soon. You'll stand when it does. You'll return your bowl. You'll line up behind the others and follow them wherever you're sent. There will be more labour. There will be more rules. There will be another night of half sleep and another morning without rest. But for now, you just sit at the bench, hands motionless, staring down at the spoon that holds a face you haven't seen in a very long time. Sometime later, an overseer barks a command, sharp, impatient, and just loud enough to snap your body to attention before your mind catches up. You don't see where he came from. One moment the corridor was still. The next it was full of noise and movement. The word scrubbing is repeated twice, and that's all anyone needs to hear. Buckets are handed out, brushes follow. Soap flakes are poured from a dented tin that looks like it's been dropped too many times. No one asks questions. You don't either. You're directed toward a narrow hallway lined with stone tiles that haven't been cleaned in weeks, maybe months. The floor is scuffed and sticky underfoot, littered with flecks of old dirt, and what might be dried blood or spilled broth. You crouch beside the others and begin. Cold water sloshes over your fingers, and the soap stings instantly, seeping into the cracks along your knuckles where the skin has already split. The brush handle is rough and swollen with age, and it doesn't fit properly in your hand. The work is slow, repetitive, and without clear instruction. No one tells you where to begin or when to stop. You simply scrub, back and forth, in small circles across patches of stone that do not seem to change no matter how much pressure you apply. The bristles fray as they drag across the grime. Your arms begin to ache again. Your knees complain against the hard floor, but you keep your head down and your hands moving. The staff don't hover exactly, they drift, they appear and vanish like smoke, materializing in doorways, turning up at the end of corridors, crossing behind you just long enough to remind you they're always near. They don't speak much beyond the commands. If they watch you, they don't make it obvious. But every so often, you hear footsteps stop just a little too close. You keep scrubbing. Some of them are cruel. You can feel it in the way they look at you when they pass. One walks with his hands clasped behind his back, the handle of his stick just visible above his belt. He doesn't use it, but he taps it now and then against the stone. Slowly, pointedly, like a metronome set to someone else's pain. Another says nothing at all, but wears an expression so taut with disdain, it speaks louder than shouting. These are the ones you learn to watch from the corner of your eye. Others seem exhausted, moving through the routine with a kind of practiced disinterest. A woman with grey-streaked hair hands out rags without looking at the faces that receive them. A man with a permanent stoop walks with a limp and a faraway gaze, as if his mind is still elsewhere, perhaps outside the walls, or decades in the past. They're no kinder, not openly, but they don't correct as harshly. Their power lies in absence, not assertion. You are corrected once for moving too slowly. The voice comes from behind and slightly above you, clipped and flat. Faster. You. That's all. Not your name, never your name. Just you, like a tool being directed, like a bucket being moved to another part of the floor. You don't look up. You nod once and increase your pace, though your wrists already ache and the joints in your fingers feel swollen. The sound of scrubbing fills the corridor, a wet, rasping rhythm made up of dozens of overlapping efforts. No one speaks. You hear breathing. You hear dripping water. You hear the occasional creak of boots shifting weight. Then faint and sudden, you hear something else. A woman's voice, sharp and anguished, crying out from another wing. It echoes briefly, then stops. No one reacts. Not the staff, not the inmates. It's as if the sound has been absorbed into the walls before it can register fully. You hesitate for half a second, then keep scrubbing. The brush handle slips from your grasp. You catch it before it hits the floor, but the movement splashes water across your knees. The cold soaks through instantly. No one notices, or if they do, no one comments. That's how things work here. Silence isn't just survival, it's routine. You press harder into the stone, not because it helps, but because it feels like the right response. Something inside you says the motion itself might be enough to keep you from being singled out again. Your reflection swims in the puddle below you, broken by suds, warped by motion. You look away. A staff member passes close enough for their coat to brush your shoulder. You tense instinctively, but the figure moves on. The soap burns more now. The open skin on your knuckles has turned white around the edges, and every pass of the bristles sends a thin line of pain up your arm. You try switching hands, but the left is worse. The blisters haven't healed yet from the yard work. You go back to the right. Time crawls. There is no end in sight, only the scrape of brushes and the slow darkening of the water in your bucket. Eventually, someone stands. A second follows. You risk a glance and see that half the corridor is now dry, or at least less dirty than before. The staff member at the end of the hall makes a short motion with 2 fingers. The signal. The scrubbing stops. You rise slowly, Knees locking, back hunched from the crouch. The bucket feels heavier now than it did before, though it holds less water. You carry it down the hall, trying not to spill. The soap sloshes over your wrist anyway, sinking into every split in your skin. The rag you used is limp and grey with filth. It drips as you walk. At the supply closet, you return your tools. The woman with the grey streaked hair checks them in. Not with words, but with a glance. She takes the rag from your hand with gloved fingers and drops it into a bin. The bucket she slides behind a screen. She doesn't look at your hands. You almost want her to, though you don't know why. You're sent back to your dormitory without ceremony. No dismissal, no permission. Just a wave of the hand in the direction of the corridor, as if returning to your cot is the only logical outcome for someone like you. You follow the hall, footsteps slow, socks soak through again, and turn when you're meant to turn. The dormitory is as you left it, diamond soils damp, still smelling faintly of bodies and stone. Some men are already lying down, others sit with their heads in their hands. The cot you've been assigned feels smaller than it did yesterday. Your blanket is rumpled from earlier, and still faintly wet at the edges. You sit down without thinking. Your hands throb. You examine your knuckles in the fading light. The skin is pink and broken in places, raw where it rubbed against the brush handle, red where the soap has irritated what was already damaged. You flex your fingers, then stop. It hurts too much. There's no bandage, no salve, just time and another bell tomorrow. The corridor outside remains quiet. You hear someone snoring already, someone else coughing into their sleeve, the scrape of a chair being dragged somewhere far off. You lower your hands into your lap and press them gently between your knees as though the pressure might help. You returned your bucket. You handed over your cloth. The tools have been logged, the work complete. And now, with the sting of soap still eating at your hands, you wait for whatever comes next. That night, the dormitory's cold again. It was cold when you left it, and somehow colder now. The walls sweat faintly near the base. The stones darkened with moisture that creeps in from somewhere behind them. The ceiling breathes in drafts, invisible but steady. The fire in the small hearth at the far end of the hall was never lit, or if it was, it died out without ceremony, hours ago. There's no smoke, no flicker of warmth, just darkness and damp. You lie on your cot fully clothed, arms folded across your chest, blanket pulled as far up as it will go. It doesn't help much. The fabric is thin, and one edge remains perpetually damp, no matter how you position it. The mattress beneath you is cold through and through. It holds the chill like a stone, and presses it into your bones through your back. You try shifting, curling, unfolding, recurling. The result is always the same, discomfort in a new position. The man in the cot nearest yours is already asleep, or pretending to be. His back is turned, his body curled toward the wall. You hear his breath catch every few minutes, in the kind of stifled wheeze that suggests either a cold or a bad lung. You've learnt not to ask. Across the room, someone coughs. It's a short, dry sound at first, but then it sharpens, turns into something wetter, rougher, and ends in a low groan, like someone trying not to vomit. No one moves to help. The rules don't sleep. You learned that quickly. Talking is forbidden. Getting up is discouraged. If the staff hear noise, they come. And when they come, they don't bring medicine or blankets. They bring the stick. Or worse, a punishment that comes quietly in the morning. Less food, more labour, a shift to the outer yard in rain. That's how they maintain control. Not with chaos, but with a very specific, grinding sort of order. A whisper breaks the air a few cots away. Just a few words, maybe a prayer. It's too faint to understand. Just breath shaped into syllables that vanish almost as quickly as they form. No one responds, no one encourages. Even comfort is dangerous here. You turn your face toward the wall and pretend you didn't hear. The lice have returned. You feel them along your scalp, tiny movements that stir just beneath the skin's awareness. You resist the urge to scratch. You've seen what happens to men who can't help it. How they tear at themselves until the skin splits. How their bedsheets stain. How infection blooms quietly in the dark. You shift instead, pressing your head into the hard edge of your cot and hoping the pressure might stun them into stillness. Someone near the entrance mutters in his sleep. The words are unintelligible, half garbled and trailing off into a sigh. It might be dreaming, or it might be madness. At this point, it's hard to know the difference. There are men here who have been in the workhouse so long, they no longer mark the passing of days, only meal times and labour bells. They shuffle from cot to bench to yard, without recognition in their eyes. You've started to memorise their faces because they never change expression. You've stopped expecting silence to mean rest. This place breathes even at night, a slow aching rhythm of coughs, creaks, wet breathing, and the occasional sound of something being dragged across stone. You hear someone scratching, relentlessly, rhythmically. Not scalp, but arm or leg, somewhere under a blanket where the lice have taken root in seams and folds. The sound goes on, unchanging. You begin to count the seconds between strokes without realising it. The shadows move as the moon shifts behind thick clouds outside. There are no windows in this part of the dormitory, only a small high vent that lets in the faintest shade of grey. Still, you can feel time shifting in the darkness. Not by sight, but by sound. Less snoring now, more groaning. Less tossing, more stillness. The kind of stillness that suggests men too exhausted to dream. Your stomach turns over once, not from hunger, but from something else. Unease maybe, or cold. The thin porridge you ate earlier has settled badly, or perhaps the ache in your gut is something deeper than digestion. You lie still, hands tucked into your armpits for warmth, feet pressed together under the edge of the blanket. One boot is still slightly damp from earlier, and the toe of your sock has worn through. Your big toe rubs against the rough blanket with every movement. A set of footsteps passes outside the door. They don't pause. The floorboards groan slightly, then go quiet again. You listen, breath shallow, until you're sure they're gone. Sometimes the overseers check in the night. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the doors open for no reason, and the cold rushes in like a punishment for nothing. You try to sleep. You close your eyes, you breathe slow, but your body won't settle. The mattress seems to amplify every twitch of your limbs. Your legs spasm once, then again. The cramps are beginning, tiny at first, just enough to make your muscles clench unexpectedly. You stretch one leg out, hoping it helps. It doesn't. The chill has crept deep enough to make your joints feel rusted. Eventually, you curl tighter. The only thing that helps is compression. You bring your knees toward your chest, tucking your chin, trying to create a small pocket of heat. It's not much, and the effort to hold the position makes your hips ache, but it's better than the open sprawl that leaves your limbs exposed to the air. Your hands remain under your arms, balled into fists. You press them tighter, hoping the pressure will distract from the itch along your scalp and the pulse in your temples. The lice haven't stopped moving. You can feel them now behind your ear and at the base of your neck. You clench your jaw to stop from groaning. Outside, somewhere far off, a dog barks once. It's the only sound you've heard from beyond the walls in hours. It reminds you that the world still turns without you. Inside, nothing changes. You breathe slowly, you count to 10, you try not to think. Eventually you manage to drift off. Your life goes on like this for some number of days. Could have been 2, could have been 10. Then one morning the bell rings again. Not the usual call to chapel, or the clang that signals a meal. This one is flatter, shorter, a tone that doesn't ask, it instructs. You rise automatically, because the others do, because hesitation is noted. The air in the dormitory is colder this morning than it was the night before. The fire was never lit, and the damp has crept into the bedding. Your shoulders ache, your knees protest, but none of that matters now. A figure appears in the doorway, a staff member with a sheet of paper and a short stick. He doesn't speak at first, just scans the room like someone checking livestock for rot. Then the names, or rather, the numbers begin. Yours is somewhere in the middle. When it comes, it's barked without inflection, without even a glance in your direction. You stand, you follow. You don't ask why. In the hall, the others move in a line, some shuffling, some stiff, none looking at one another. The corridor stretches ahead, grey and lightless, and the only sound is the soft slapping of bare feet against stone. You've been directed toward the outer gate. That much is clear. No one says it aloud, but the meaning is unmistakable. Your time here is finished. No explanation, no warning. Just the sense that whatever use they saw in you has already been wrung out. At the end of the corridor, an orderly waits with a wooden crate beside him. Inside, a handful of bundled clothes, soiled, damp, loosely folded. He calls your number again, and when you step forward, he tosses a bundle in your direction. You catch it clumsily. Your fingers are still numb. The uniform it replaces has already begun to cling to your skin like mildew, but the garments you now hold aren't an improvement. They're your own clothes, or what's left of them, creased, smudged, and crawling with things you'd rather not identify. You're given no time to change. The gate is already being unlatched. You hear the iron bolt slide with a sharp clang. No farewell, no instruction, just a blank-faced porter and a door opening slowly to the outside world where the drizzle hasn't stopped. The courtyard is empty. Mud slicks the cobblestones and the drizzle falls in a steady rhythm, soft but endless. You step through the gate and feel the weather wrap around you like a wet shroud. The door shuts behind you before your second foot leaves the threshold. Not slammed, just closed. Firm final. For a moment, you don't move. You're standing in the same drizzle you left behind days ago. Only now, it's colder. It always feels colder after some time inside. Your shoes, if you can still call them that, are soft with rot at the toes. The soles squish faintly as you shift your weight. You hug the bundle of clothes tighter to your chest, more to give your hands something to do than out of any hope of warmth. You look down the lane. It's the same one you came up not so long ago. The same one that curved off the main street like an afterthought, flanked by brick and soot and the occasional pile of refuse that the rain never quite washes clean. The workhouse stands behind you now, high-walled and impassive. No sign marks it. No light glows from the windows. From the outside it could be anything. An old mill, a school, a prison. Perhaps it is all of those in spirit, if not in name. You take a step forward. Then another. The drizzle beads along your sleeves. You can already feel your stomach beginning to twist again, hollow and resentful. The gruel they served you yesterday didn't last. It never does. Your body is still fatigued from the labour, from the cold, from the quiet violence of being watched constantly without being seen. Your feet slip a little on the stones, and you steady yourself against a crumbling wall, fingers brushing wet brick. You pass a shop shuttered for the morning. A woman hurries by, cloak tight around her shoulders, face downturned. She doesn't look at you. No one does. Not really. You're back to being what you were before, a shape in the mist, a shadow too thin to matter. One of many. Your thoughts drift, not to what comes next. Because there is no next. Not really. Just more streets, more doorways, maybe the churchyard, if the vicar isn't watching. Maybe the alley behind the bakery, if the night watch has moved on. You know where the heat vents are. You know which roofs leak less than others. You've known it all for longer than you care to measure. You're not angry. Not exactly. That takes energy. What you feel is smaller, heavier, a quiet compression at the base of your ribs, like something inside you is folding in on itself, trying to take up less space. You thought perhaps that the workhouse would offer something solid. Not kindness, not even comfort, but maybe structure. A wall against the rain, a dry cot, a pause. But the structure doesn't hold you. It holds itself. You are just one more body, it absorbed and released as needed. Like breath through a broken lung. You keep walking. You don't know how long it's been since you left the gate. 5 minutes, half an hour. Time slips again, like it did in the workhouse. Your arms hang heavy at your sides, sleeves sticking to your skin. Your fingers are cracked in the creases, and the soap still lingers faintly beneath your nails. The city moves around you, slow and disinterested. Carts pass. A boy runs by with a bundle of newspapers. Somewhere, a man laughs from inside a pub. The sound doesn't reach you in any real way. It feels foreign, part of a different life. You pass a row of stalls beginning to open for trade. A woman shakes out a cloth with rhythmic snaps. A man sorts fish into bins of slowly melting ice. You don't stop. You don't meet anyone's eyes. You know how you must look. Hollow-cheeked, hunched, still marked by the place you just left. It lingers on you, the workhouse, like the faint scent of carbolic and grease and failure. People smell it, even if they don't realise they do. You're not one of them, not a customer, not a neighbour, just a shape passing through, permitted to exist so long as you keep moving. Your stomach cramps again, the dull reminder of a body still empty. You had your gruel, you had your ration, but it doesn't stay, it doesn't last. Hunger is quieter now, more patient, but no less present. It settles in the spaces between your ribs and waits. It always waits. You pause beneath the overhang of a butcher's shop, not for the meat, which you know better than to stare at, but for the brief cover from the drizzle. The rain hasn't stopped. It never really does this time of year. It just shifts weight, mist to droplets to fog, then back again. You adjust your collar and step away before the owner notices you loitering. A constable crosses the road ahead of you, coat stiff with pride and mud. You slow your steps without thinking. No one wants to look like they're lingering when there's nothing to linger for. You keep your head low, your gait even. He glances once, then moves on. The same indifference you've come to expect. The same reminder that whatever happened to you in there wasn't meant to make you safer, just less visible. You walk past the alley where you used to sleep. It's occupied now. 2 shapes huddle behind a crate, covered in something that might once have been a coat. You don't stop. You've learned the rules. Don't stare, don't ask, don't approach, unless you're willing to share what little you have. And you have nothing, not even warmth. Further down, you pass a church. Not the one tied to the workhouse, but another, older, its stones dark with years of soot and rain. A bell rings within it, lower, softer than the clang of the iron handbell in the chapel. The sound reminds you of the sermon. You hadn't meant to remember, but you do. The droning voice, the glint of gold at the speaker's wrist, the words about sin and sloth and gratitude, spoken to a room of empty eyes. You remember nodding when others did, though you didn't hear the question. Just the rhythm, the habit, the performance of obedience. You blink and realise you've stopped again. Not from weakness, though, that's part of it, but from something closer to confusion. Your eyes trace the stones of the path in front of you and realise where you are. The gate, it's in front of you. The same high iron bars, the same soot-streaked stone columns, the same arch with its modest plaque and chipped paint. There's no one at the door now, no porter, no line. Just the gate, shut again like it had never opened. You don't knock, you don't plan to, but you don't leave either. Your feet stay planted on the spot where the cobbles meet the wet stone. The drizzle darkens your shoulders again, seeps down the back of your neck where the seam of your collar has split. You pull the coat tighter, though it helps nothing. Still you stare. You remember the cot. Narrow, damp, crowded too close to the next. The way your shoulder touched another man's back every time he shifted. The smell of sweat, of wet wool, of sleep half earned and never finished. You remember the gruel, the texture more than the taste, the sound it made hitting the bottom of the tin, the way your fingers scraped the last bit from the sides while a staff member paced behind you, boots sharp on the stone. You remember the sermon, not the words, just the weight of it, the performance, the demand for shame, the way even gratitude became another form of obedience. You remember the stones, sharp, round, heavy, the ache in your palms, the slow, dumb work of moving something from one pile to another without purpose, the silence between workers, the way the staff watched, not out of interest, but habit. And you remember the man beside you who never said a word, the one with the twisted ear and the old boots, who never cried, never asked, just endured. You think about him now, and the others, and how many of them are still inside, still doing the same tasks, hearing the same bells, learning the same silence. You wonder if they feel warmer than you do right now. You wonder if the cot, narrow, damp and hard, feels kinder than this wind. If the spoonfuls of gruel, meagre and cold, sit better than the emptiness in your stomach now. You wonder if being forgotten within was less painful than being ignored out here. You don't reach for the gate, you don't raise your hand to knock. You just stand, water dripping from your sleeves, and feel the ache settle deeper into your knees. The city moves behind you, slow and uncaring. The gate doesn't move, the rain doesn't stop. You draw your hands into your pockets and turn slowly. The street stretches before you in both directions, neither promising much. You pick one. Not because it's better, not because it's safer, just because it leads away. You walk again, not faster, not stronger, just forward. And behind you, the gate remains. That brings us to the end of tonight's quiet descent, the damp corridors, hollow meals, and unspoken rules of a world meant not to reform, but to erase. You weren't a criminal, just another nameless figure, swept off the street and folded into the grey machinery of the workhouse, only to emerge colder, hungrier, and more forgotten than before. If you'd like early access to more of these slow journeys through the parts of history no one asked to remember, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S., Amanda Lamke, and Rich Davis. Sleep well.